You're 32, Aubrey. You're essentially depreciating code in a market looking for the next upgrade. Sebastian didn't yell. He swirled his scotch, his voice dripping with that terrifying, quiet pity. Lila is fresh, uncomplicated. Lila Banks giggled, clutching his arm, the diamond on her finger catching the light. A diamond Aubrey had helped him pick out for his mother. No husband yet, and now, no job. Sebastian smirked, tossing a severance envelope onto the mahogany table. Take the charity, Aubrey. It's the only value you have left. He thought she would cry. He thought she would beg. He didn't see the man in the charcoal suit watching from the shadows, a man who owned the very building they were standing in. The air inside the Gilded Lily, New York's most pretentious rooftop lounge, smelled of expensive perfume and betrayal. It was the night of the Thorn Logistics IPO celebration, a night Aubrey Langston had spent 5 years working toward. She had built the back-end infrastructure, smoothed over the regulatory cracks, and practically raised Sebastian Thorn from a chaotic startup founder to a tech mogul. And this was her reward. A public execution disguised as a breakup. Aubrey stood frozen near the VIP section, the silk of her emerald dress suddenly feeling like a constricting snake. Sebastian Thorn, the man she had lived with for 4 years, stood before her, not with a ring, but with an audience. To his left clung Lila Banks, a 22-year-old influencer whose primary contribution to society was unboxing videos and, apparently, stealing partners. "You're making a scene, Sebastian," Aubrey said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. She refused to give him the tears he was clearly mining for. "I'm stating facts, Bray," Sebastian replied, using the nickname he'd whispered in the dark only nights ago. He adjusted his bespoke lapels. "Look at you. You're tired. You've lost your edge. Thorn Logistics is a billion-dollar entity now. I need a partner who reflects that vitality. Lila represents the future. You represent the grind." Lila offered a pout that was surgically enhanced to perfection. "Don't be mean, Bash. She looks nice. For her age, it's very vintage. The circle of onlookers, friends Aubrey had hosted for dinners, investors she had charmed, laughed. It was a nervous, sycophantic laughter, the kind that follows money, regardless of morality. Gisele Stone, Aubrey's supposed best friend and college roommate, stepped forward. Aubrey felt a flicker of hope. Gisele would stop this. "He's right, Aubrey," Gisele said, her eyes cold, handing Sebastian a fresh drink. "You've been dragging down the brand aesthetic for months. It's embarrassing." The betrayal hit harder than the breakup. Aubrey looked at Gisele, realizing in a sickening flash why Gisele had been so insistent on Aubrey missing the last 3 board meetings. It hadn't been to rest. It had been a coup. "The severance check," Sebastian said, nodding to the envelope on the table. "It's generous. 6 months' pay. Enough to find yourself a cat and a nice studio apartment in, I don't know, Queens?" Aubrey reached out, her fingers brushing the envelope. The room went silent. She picked it up, feeling the weight of her dignity in her hands. Then she ripped it in half. The sound of the tearing paper was louder than a scream in the quiet lounge. She ripped it again and again, letting the confetti rain down into Sebastian's scotch. "I don't want your money, Sebastian," Aubrey said, her voice dropping an octave, turning icy. "And I don't want your pity. You think you built this company? You're the face, I was the spine, and frankly, your posture has always been terrible." She turned on her heel, ignoring Sebastian's shocked sputter, and walked toward the exit. She held her head high, her heels clicking a rhythm of survival on the marble floor. She didn't look back. She didn't see the sympathetic glances or the cruel smirks. She just needed air. She pushed through the heavy glass doors onto the terrace, finally away from the noise. She marched to the railing, gripping the cold metal, looking out at the Manhattan skyline. Only then did she let the first tear fall. It was hot and angry. That was an expensive, dramatic exit. A deep, gravelly voice spoke from the shadows of a decorative pillar. Aubrey jumped, wiping her face instantly. The lounge is closed for private events. You shouldn't be here. A man stepped into the dim light. He was tall, imposing, wearing a suit that cost more than Sebastian's car. He had dark hair silvering at the temples, and eyes that seemed to dissect her soul. Asher Vaughan. The Asher Vaughan. The CEO of Vaughan Global, a conglomerate that ate companies like Thorn Logistics for breakfast. He wasn't supposed to be here. He was supposed to be in Zurich or Tokyo, running the world. I own the building, Asher said, calmly, taking a step closer. He didn't offer a handkerchief. He wasn't that kind of cliché. He offered a cigarette lighter, flicking it open to illuminate the darkness, though neither of them was smoking. I saw the show inside, tearing up the check, heavy-handed but effective. He thinks I'm old news, Aubrey said, bitter laugh escaping her lips. Depreciating assets. Sebastian Thorne is a child playing with a calculator, Asher said, snapping the lighter shut. I've been tracking his logistics algorithms. They're sloppy. I assume you wrote the original code, but someone else has been patching it since Q3. Aubrey blinked, stunned. Yes. How did you know? Because the efficiency dropped by 4.2% in the last 6 months, Asher stated simply. About the same time, I assume he started optimizing his personal life with Miss Banks. He looked at her, really looked at her. He didn't see a 32-year-old spinster. He saw the intelligence in her eyes, the steel in her spine. You're Aubrey Langston, he said. It wasn't a question. Top of your class at MIT, specialized in supply chain automatization. You ghost-wrote the code that just made that idiot inside a billionaire. Formerly, I was just the operations manager, Aubrey muttered. I didn't care about the titles. I just wanted the company to work. And that is why you are currently unemployed, Asher said brutally. Humility is a luxury for the wealthy, Miss Langston. For the rest of us, it's a liability. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a plain black business card. It had no logo, just a number and a name embossed in silver. Vaughan. I don't hire charity cases, Asher said, handing it to her. But I have a mess in my North American shipping division. My sister, Winter, is firing analysts faster than I can hire them. If you can survive her interview, you have a job. If you cry like you did just now, don't bother calling. He turned and walked away before she could even say thank you. Aubrey stared at the card. It felt heavier than the severance check ever had. Inside, the music swelled. Sebastian was probably toasting to his future. But standing in the cold, clutching the black card, Aubrey realized her future had just walked past her. The transition from partner of the CEO to unemployed was swift and brutal. Within 24 hours, Sebastian had locked her out of the company servers. Gisele had blocked her number. Lila had posted a TikTok mocking bitter exes that garnered 3 million views. Aubrey didn't watch it. She was too busy preparing for war. She spent 3 days in her apartment, not wallowing, but studying. She analyzed Vaughan Global's public records, their shipping manifests, their bottlenecks. She knew Asher Vaughan wasn't offering her a handout. He was offering a test. On the 4th day, she walked into the Vaughan Global Tower. It was a monolith of glass and steel, a stark contrast to the trendy, exposed brick vibe of Thorn Logistics. This was old money, serious power. The interview was not with Asher. It was with Winter Grayson, Asher's younger sister and the chief operating officer. Winter was terrifying. She sat behind a desk made of reclaimed aircraft metal, filing her nails while Aubrey sat in a chair that felt intentionally uncomfortable. "My brother says you have potential," Winter said without looking up. "I think you're baggage, Sebastian Thorne's discard pile. Why should I let you near my data?" "Because your Asian distribution hub is bleeding money," Aubrey said, sliding a folder across the desk. "I analyzed your shipping routes. You're using a third-party contractor in Singapore that is overcharging you by 15% on fuel surcharges. It's buried in the sub-ledger." Winter stopped filing. She looked at the folder, then at Aubrey. Her eyes were the same icy blue as Asher's. She flipped the folder open, scanning the data. Silence stretched for a minute. "Grant!" Winter barked. An older man, perhaps in his 60s, shuffled in from the side office. He looked like a kind grandfather, wearing a cardigan that cost more than Aubrey's car. This was Grant Grayson, Asher and Winter's uncle, and the company's legal shark. "Yes, my dear." Grant smiled warmly at Aubrey. "She found the Singapore leak," Winter said, her voice devoid of emotion. "In 3 days. It took our internal audit team 3 months, and they missed it." Grant chuckled. "Well then, welcome aboard, Miss Langston. Don't let Winter scare you. She bites, but she's vaccinated." Aubrey was hired as a senior analyst. It was a step down in title from her previous life, but a step up in every other way. She threw herself into the work. She was the first one in, the last one out. She wore simple suits, pulled her hair back, and let her work speak. 2 months passed. Aubrey hadn't seen Asher since the balcony. He was a ghost in the machine, his emails dictating the flow of the empire. But the past wasn't done with her. One Tuesday evening, while reconciling accounts for a potential merger, Aubrey noticed something odd. Vaughn Global was looking to acquire a mid-sized logistics firm to handle domestic last-mile delivery. The front-runner for the acquisition? Thorne Logistics. Aubrey's heart hammered. She dug deeper into the due diligence files. The numbers looked perfect. Too perfect. She remembered the night Sebastian had spent with Gisele, going over the books. She remembered the frantic restructuring Sebastian had done right before the IPO. Aubrey pulled up the raw data. She layered her old algorithms, the ones she wrote, over the current Thorne reports. They didn't match. Sebastian was inflating his user numbers. He was counting initiated shipments as completed revenue. It was a classic pump-and-dump scheme, dressed up in a tailored suit. If Asher bought Thorne Logistics, he would be buying a hollow shell, and Sebastian would walk away with hundreds of millions, leaving Vaughn Global to clean up the mess. "You look like you've seen a ghost," a voice said. Aubrey spun around. Asher Vaughn was leaning against her doorframe. It was 9 p.m. The office was empty. "Mr. Vaughn," she stood up, smoothing her skirt. I didn't know you were in the building." "I live in the penthouse," Asher said, walking into her small office. He looked tired, his tie loosened. "Winter tells me you're a machine. She actually likes you. She hates everyone." "I just do the work," Aubrey said. "And what is the work telling you right now?" Asher gestured to her screens, which were covered in red flags and highlighted spreadsheets. Aubrey hesitated. If she spoke, she looked like the vindictive ex trying to sabotage Sebastian's big payday. If she stayed silent, the company she now respected would lose millions, theme of truth over emotion. "The Thorne acquisition," Aubrey said clearly. "It's a trap." Asher's expression didn't change. "Explain." "The revenue recognition policy," she pointed to the screen. "Sebastian changed it in Q4. He's recognizing income before delivery." It puffs up the EBITDA by 30%. Legally grey but operationally suicidal. The company has no cash flow. It's running on debt masked as receivables. Asher moved closer, standing right beside her. He smelled of sandalwood and expensive scotch. A better scotch than Sebastian ever drank. He leaned over, his hand resting on the desk near hers as he studied the numbers. The proximity was electric, but his focus was purely professional. "Can you prove this?" Asher asked, his voice low. "I wrote the original code," Aubrey said. "I know where the bodies are buried because I dug the graves. Metaphorically. I can prove it. But I need access to the raw server data, which I don't have." Asher straightened up. He looked at her, intense and calculating. "We have a final negotiation meeting with Thorne and his team tomorrow. They are pushing for a fast close. Victor North, my competitor, is also bidding, driving the price up." "Victor North is a shark," Aubrey warned. "If he finds this out before you do, he'll short the stock and destroy Sebastian publicly. But if you buy it, the loss is yours." "Then we need to expose it in the room," Asher decided. "Tomorrow, you're coming with me." "Mr. Vaughan, I can't," Aubrey panicked. "Sebastian, the media, the narrative is that I'm the crazy ex-girlfriend. If I walk in there, they'll say I'm just trying to ruin him." Asher stepped closer, forcing her to look up at him. "Let them say what they want. You are the only person in this city who knows the truth. Are you an analyst, Aubrey? Or are you a victim? Choose." Aubrey breathed in. The fear was there, choking her, but beneath it was anger, righteous, burning anger. "I'm an analyst," she whispered. "Good," Asher said, a rare, small smile touching his lips. "Wear something sharp. We're going to war." The conference room at Vaughan Global was designed to intimidate. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city, making the people inside feel like gods. Sebastian Thorne sat at the head of the guest side, flanked by Gisele and his legal team. Lila was there too, technically as brand ambassador, but mostly to look decorative and stroke Sebastian's ego. They were laughing, confident. They had played Victor North against Asher Vaughan, driving the acquisition price up to $1.2 billion. They were about to be richer than God. The doors opened. Asher Vaughan walked in, his energy consuming the room. The chatter stopped instantly. "Gentlemen," Asher said, buttoning his jacket, "and ladies." "Asher," Sebastian stood up, extending a hand. "Ready to sign? North is calling me every 5 minutes, but I told him I wanted to give you first refusal. Professional courtesy." "Appreciated," Asher said, ignoring the handshake. He took his seat at the head of the table. "However, my team had a few last-minute queries regarding the stickiness of your user base." Sebastian laughed dismissively. "The numbers speak for themselves. Triple-digit growth." "So you say," Asher noted, "but I prefer to hear it from my lead analyst on this project." Asher pressed a button on the intercom. "Send her in." The side door opened. Aubrey Langston walked in. She wore a tailored crimson suit that fit like armor, her hair sleek and sharp. She held a tablet against her chest. She didn't look at the floor. She looked straight at Sebastian. The color drained from Sebastian's face. Gisele dropped her pen. Lila's mouth fell open, creating a very unattractive O shape. "Aubrey," Sebastian sputtered. "What is this? Asher, this is a joke, right? She's my ex-girlfriend. She was a low-level manager we let go for incompetence." "Incompetence?" Asher raised an eyebrow. "Funny. My HR department calls her a prodigy." "She's biased!" Gisele shrieked, standing up. "She's here to sabotage the deal because she's bitter she didn't get a ring." "Sit down, Ms. Stone." Asher's voice cracked like a whip. "Or security will remove you." Gisele sat, fuming. "Aubrey," Sebastian said, his voice taking on that mocking, patronizing tone. "Honey, this is the big leagues. You don't belong here. Go fetch some coffee before you embarrass yourself." Aubrey placed the tablet on the table and connected it to the main screen. "I'm not here for coffee, Sebastian. I'm here for the audit." She tapped the screen. A massive chart appeared. "This," Aubrey pointed, her voice steady and commanding, "is the reported revenue for Q1, and this is the actual cash deposit log from the bank APIs." The red line on the graph plummeted. The room went deathly silent. "You're counting projected renewals as cash in hand," Aubrey explained, looking at the horrified investors on Sebastian's side. "You're leveraging future debt against current operating costs. It's a Ponzi structure, Sebastian. The moment user growth slows by even 2%, the whole thing collapses." "She's lying," Sebastian roared, slamming his hand on the table. "She forged it." "Did I?" Aubrey asked coolly. "I cross-referenced the shipping IDs. Half of your high-volume clients are shell companies registered to a P.O. box in the Caymans. A P.O. box registered to Stone Consulting." She looked at Gisele. Gisele turned pale. Asher leaned back, steepling his fingers. "Fraud is a strong word, Sebastian, but federal prison is a stronger phrase." Sebastian looked around the room. His lawyers were furiously whispering to each other. He realized the trap had snapped shut. You bitch," Sebastian hissed at Aubrey. "I made you. I gave you a life." "You gave me a job," Aubrey corrected. "I built the life, and now I'm correcting the error." Asher stood up. "The deal is off. And Sebastian, I'm sending this data to the SEC and Victor North. I imagine Victor won't be as polite as I am." "You can't do this," Sebastian pleaded, sweating now. "Asher, listen. We can restructure. Don't listen to her. She's nobody." Asher walked around the table and stood next to Aubrey. He placed a hand on the small of her back, a protective, claiming gesture that sent a shockwave through the room. "She is the most competent person in this room," Asher said, his voice lethal. "And she is the future CFO of this division. You, Sebastian, are depreciated inventory." Asher guided Aubrey toward the door. "Let's go, Ms. Langston. We have real work to do." They walked out, leaving Sebastian amidst the ruins of his empire. In the hallway, once the doors closed, Aubrey's knees finally gave out. She stumbled, but Asher caught her. His grip was strong, warm. "Breathe," he commanded gently. "I did it," she gasped, trembling. "I actually did it." "You were magnificent," Asher said, and for the first time, his eyes weren't analyzing data. They were analyzing her lips. Just then, the elevator pinged. A man stepped out. Victor North. He was slick, predatory, and smiling. "Vaughn," Victor nodded. "I hear the deal is dead. Shame. I was looking forward to gutting Thorn." He looked at Aubrey, his eyes lingering. "And who is the weapon of mass destruction?" "She's with me," Asher said, his tone shifting to pure territorial aggression. Victor chuckled. "For now, Asher. For now." Asher's hand tightened on Aubrey's arm. The fallout from the boardroom slaughter, as the financial blogs dubbed it, was immediate and catastrophic for Thorn Logistics. Within 48 hours, the IPO was stalled. The SEC had opened a preliminary inquiry, and Sebastian Thorn's face was splashed across the Wall Street Journal, not as a visionary, but as a cautionary tale. For Aubrey Langston, however, the silence was over. She sat in her new office, a corner suite on the 45th floor of Vaughn Global, overlooking the very city that had felt like a prison just weeks ago. The title on the door read, Chief Strategy Officer, Logistics Division. It wasn't a handout, it was a battlefield commission. "You're staring at the view again," Winter Grayson said, leaning against the glass door. sipping an espresso that looked darker than her soul. It's inefficient. The view doesn't generate revenue. Aubrey turned, smiling faintly. She had learned that Winter's abrasiveness was a love language. I'm not staring. I'm thinking about the Crimson Gala tonight. Asher insists I attend. He doesn't insist, Winter corrected, walking in and placing a garment bag on the sofa. He commands. And he's right. Tonight is the Shark Tank. Sebastian will be there, trying to salvage his reputation. Victor North will be there, trying to steal ours. You need to look like you own the water, not like you're floating in it. Aubrey eyed the bag. I have a dress. You have a closet full of sensible corporate wear that screams middle management, Winter scoffed. Asher had this flown in from Milan. Don't ask the price. It's vulgar to discuss money we clearly have. Winter unzipped the bag. It was a masterpiece of midnight blue velvet and silver threading, designed to look like a starry night sky. It was elegant, powerful, and undeniably sexy. He picked this? Aubrey asked, her cheeks flushing. He has eyes, Aubrey, Winter said dryly, and despite his terrifying demeanor, he seems to use them primarily on you lately. Put it on. War paint at 7. The Crimson Gala was held at the Met, a cavernous hall filled with billionaires, politicians, and the social climbers who preyed on them. The air vibrated with the sound of string quartets and hushed gossip. When Aubrey arrived on Asher's arm, the room didn't just go quiet, it seemed to inhale. Asher Vaughan wore a tuxedo that fit him like a second skin, but his eyes were fixed solely on Aubrey. He guided her through the crowd with a hand on her lower back, a tactile barrier against the world. Breathe, Asher whispered against her ear, sending a shiver down her spine. You look dangerous. I like it. Everyone is staring, Aubrey murmured, clutching her clutch as if it were a weapon. Let them, Asher replied. They're trying to figure out if you're my mistress or my mastermind. Let's leave them guessing. Across the room, Sebastian Thorne was holding court, though his circle was significantly smaller than usual. He looked haggard. The stress of the failed acquisition and the looming investigation had etched lines around his eyes. Lila Banks hung off him, looking bored and tapping furiously on her phone, likely live-streaming their glamorous night. When Sebastian saw Aubrey, he stopped mid-sentence. He dropped his drink. Is that Aubrey? Lila asked, her voice carrying over the music. Why is she wearing that? Is it a rental? Sebastian ignored her. He marched across the room, his face a mask of desperate entitlement. He intercepted Aubrey and Asher near the champagne fountain. Aubrey, Sebastian said, his voice tight. You have some nerve showing your face here after the stunt you pulled. Good evening, Sebastian, Aubrey said coolly. I believe the stunt was simply accurate accounting. You should try it sometime. You ruined me, Sebastian hissed, leaning in, ignoring Asher's darkening expression. The SEC is crawling up my ass. Investors are pulling out. You need to issue a retraction. Say you made a mistake. Say you were emotional. She will do no such thing. Asher stepped forward, his height dwarfing Sebastian. And if you step 1 inch closer to my CSO, I will have security escort you out through the kitchen entrance. She's my ex, Sebastian snapped. I know her. She's soft. She doesn't have the stomach for this, Asher. She's a back-end coder, not a player. He turned his eyes to Aubrey, trying to summon that old charm. Bray, come on. We were a team. Don't let him use you to destroy me. Come back to Thorne Logistics. I'll give you a raise. I'll even make you a partner. For real this time. It was a desperate, pathetic Hail Mary. Aubrey looked at the man she had wasted 4 years on. She saw the sweat on his brow, the fear in his eyes, She felt nothing but a distant, clinical pity. "I am a partner, Sebastian," Aubrey said softly, "at Vaughan Global, and unlike you, Asher doesn't need me to fix his mistakes. He needs me to build his future." "She's lying," Lila chimed in, stepping up and looking Aubrey up and down with disdain. "You're just a rebound employee. Bash is going to bounce back. We're launching a crypto token next week, Thorn Coin. It's going to be huge." Aubrey laughed. It was a genuine, bright sound that startled them both. "Thorn Coin? Oh, Sebastian, you really are desperate." Before Sebastian could explode, a shadow fell over the group. Victor North had arrived. Victor was a man who looked like he had been carved out of granite and bad intentions. He wore a white tuxedo jacket, a bold choice that signaled he didn't fear spills or judgment. "Asher," Victor nodded, his eyes sliding to Aubrey. "And the famous Miss Langston. I must say, the financial audits you performed were poetry, brutal, violent poetry." "Victor," Asher acknowledged, his body tensing. "I'm just here to offer my condolences to Mr. Thorne." Victor smiled, showing too many teeth. "I heard your stock price hit a 52-week low today. I'm buying, of course, for scrap." "Go to hell, North," Sebastian spat, grabbing Lila's arm roughly. "We're leaving." As Sebastian dragged a protesting Lila away, Victor turned his full attention to Aubrey. "You know, Miss Langston, talent like yours is wasted on a sinking ship like Thorn, and frankly, Vaughan Global is conservative. My firm, North Star, rewards aggression. Name your price." "She's not for sale, Victor," Asher said, his voice low and dangerous. "Everything is for sale, Asher," Victor chuckled. "It's just a matter of currency." He bowed slightly to Aubrey. "Think about it. I promise I don't demand my executives wear velvet to distract from the balance sheets." He walked away, leaving a chill in the air. "He's going to come for us," Aubrey said quietly. "Let him," Asher said, taking her hand and placing it on his arm. "I have you." Checkmate is inevitable. The weeks following the gala were a blur of high-stakes corporate maneuvering. Aubrey was leading the restructuring of Vaughan's North American shipping lanes, a massive project worth hundreds of millions. She was brilliant, tireless, and for the first time in her life, appreciated. But the enemy wasn't just outside the gates, it was slithering inside. Gisele Stone, facing the collapse of her consulting firm due to the Thorn scandal, had reached out to Victor North. She had no loyalty, only a survival instinct. Victor had given her a simple task: find dirt on Aubrey Langston, destroy her credibility, and the SEC investigation into Thorn, which implicated Gisele, would lose its primary witness. Gisele knew Aubrey's passwords. She knew her old email accounts. She knew her mother's maiden name. One Wednesday, Aubrey arrived at her office to find Winter waiting for her, flanked by 2 members of the internal security team. The atmosphere was suffocating. "Winter?" Aubrey dropped her bag. "What's going on?" "We found a leak," Winter said, her voice trembling slightly, something Aubrey had never heard before. Confidential merger data regarding the Tokyo deal was sent to Victor North's private server last night at 3 a.m. Aubrey frowned. "Okay, so trace the IP, find the mole." "We did," Winter said, holding up a printout. "It came from your terminal, Aubrey, using your encryption key." The room spun. "That's impossible. I was asleep. I was with—" She stopped. She couldn't say she was with Asher. They had spent the night talking, just talking, in his penthouse, falling asleep on the couch reviewing contracts. But admitting that would look like she was sleeping her way to protection. "I didn't do it," Aubrey said firmly. "Someone spoofed my credentials." "The logs are hard-coded," the head of security said apologetically. "Ms. Langston, We have to suspend your access pending a full forensic audit. Standard protocol. You think I'm a traitor? Aubrey looked at Winter. Betrayed. I think you're smart, Winter said, her eyes hard. Smart enough to play both sides. I warned Asher you were baggage. Where is he? Aubrey demanded. In a meeting with the Japanese delegation. He doesn't know yet. I'm handling it. Winter pointed to the door. Go home, Aubrey. Don't log in. Don't call anyone. Aubrey was escorted out of the building like a criminal. As she stood on the sidewalk, she saw a black sedan parked across the street. The window rolled down. Giselle Stone sat in the back seat, wearing oversized sunglasses. She lowered them, winked, and the car sped off. Aubrey's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Karma's a bitch, isn't she? Gee. Aubrey didn't go home. She went to the only place she could think of, a small internet cafe in Queens she used to visit in college. She bought a burner laptop with cash. She knew she hadn't sent the files, which meant someone had remote access. For 6 hours, Aubrey Langston didn't act like a CFO. She acted like the MIT coding prodigy she was. She backtraced the packet headers of the stolen data. She bypassed Vaughn Global's firewall, a feat that should have been impossible, to access the raw server logs. She found the anomaly. The data hadn't been sent from her terminal. It had been routed through her terminal from an external source, a source using a legacy backdoor key, a key that belonged to Thorn Logistics. Sebastian and Giselle had used an old shared server link she had set up years ago for a joint project, a link she had forgotten to sever in the breakup chaos. They had framed her. She was about to save the evidence when her screen went black. A message appeared in green text. Nice try, Ms. Langston. But we own the network now. VN. Victor North. He was working with Sebastian. It wasn't just revenge, it was a hostile takeover. Aubrey slammed the laptop shut. She needed Asher, but she couldn't call him. His phone was likely compromised too. She ran out into the rain, hailing a cab. Vaughn Tower, fast. When she arrived, the lobby was in chaos. Security tried to stop her. I need to see the CEO, Aubrey shouted, drenched and frantic. Miss Langston, you are banned from the premises, the guard shouted, grabbing her arm. Let her go. The voice boomed through the marble hall. Asher stood at the top of the escalators. He looked furious, not at her, but at the world. He descended the stairs 2 at a time. Asher, they framed me, Aubrey cried, ignoring the stares of the staff. It was a legacy link. Sebastian and Victor. I know, Asher said, pulling her into his arms right there in the lobby, soaking his expensive suit with her rain-drenched clothes. I know, Aubrey. You do? She pulled back, looking up at him. Winter showed me the logs, Asher said grimly. She thought it was proof of your guilt. I looked at the timestamps. At 3 a.m., you were asleep on my shoulder. I know where you were. He turned to the security guard. Reactivate her credentials, immediately, and get my sister down here. But the board, the guard stammered. I am the board, Asher roared. He took Aubrey's face in his hands. They tried to use you to get to me. They made a fatal error. What error? Aubrey asked, her heart pounding. They made it personal, Asher said. Now, we don't just beat them. We bury them. The counterattack was swift and merciless. With Asher's resources and Aubrey's knowledge of Thorn's internal systems, they didn't just defend. They dismantled. Aubrey spent the next 24 hours in the war room, a secure bunker in the basement of Vaughn Global. She traced the unauthorized access back to Giselle's IP address. But she found more. She found emails between Sebastian and Victor North discussing price fixing. It was illegal. Highly illegal. We have them, Aubrey said, rubbing her tired eyes. RICO statutes, corporate espionage, wire fraud. It's all here. Grant is drafting the affidavits now, Asher said, placing a cup of tea in front of her. He hadn't left her side. But we need to deliver the final blow publicly. Sebastian is launching his Thorn coin today at a press conference. He thinks he's pivoting to crypto to save the company. He's using the remaining company liquidity to back the coin, Aubrey realized, looking at the flows. If the coin fails, the company is insolvent immediately. Exactly. Asher smiled coldly. And who better to explain the volatility of the market than you? The Thorn Logistics press conference was held in a rented warehouse in Brooklyn, styled to look gritty and tech-forward. Sebastian stood on stage in a black turtleneck, channeling Steve Jobs, but sweating like a sinner in church. Lila stood nearby, modeling a T-shirt with the crypto logo. "Thorn coin is the future," Sebastian yelled to a crowd of paid influencers and skeptical journalists. "It is backed by the solid infrastructure of Thorn Logistics." Actually, a voice amplified by a microphone cut through the room. It's backed by debt and stolen algorithms. The giant screen behind Sebastian flickered. The Thorn coin logo disappeared, replaced by a live feed of Aubrey Langston sitting in the Vaughan war room. "Aubrey!" Sebastian screamed. "Cut the feed! Cut it!" "You can't cut the truth, Sebastian," Aubrey said calmly from the screen. "I've just uploaded the real-time balance sheet of Thorn Logistics to the public blockchain. Every investor can see it. You have $4,000 in liquid assets and $400 million in debt." The room erupted. Journalists checked their phones. The stock ticker for Thorn Logistics, visible on the side screens, began to freefall. "This is a lie!" Gisele shrieked from the front row. "She hacked us!" "And here," Aubrey continued, relentless, "is a recording of a call between Gisele Stone and Victor North, dated 2 days ago. Audio played. Just plant the file on Langston's computer. Once she's discredited, Sebastian can liquidate the pension fund before the SEC freezes it." Gisele froze. The crowd turned on her. Flashbulbs exploded like gunfire. "Victor North tried to buy a corpse," Aubrey said, "and Sebastian Thorn tried to sell you all a ghost." On stage, Sebastian looked small. His confident facade cracked. He looked at Lila for support, but Lila was already backing away, typing on her phone. Likely a breakup statement. "It's over, Sebastian," Aubrey said softly. "The DOJ is waiting at the back exit." As if on cue, doors opened. Federal agents in windbreakers swarmed the room. The feed cut. Back in the war room, silence fell. It was done. The dragon was slain. Aubrey slumped back in her chair, the adrenaline crashing. She felt a hand on her shoulder. "You were terrifying," Winter said, standing in the doorway. "I have never been more attracted to a co-worker's competence in my life." Aubrey laughed weakly. "Is that a compliment?" "From her, it's a marriage proposal," Asher joked, stepping in. "Winter, give us a minute." Winter nodded, a rare look of respect on her face, and closed the door. Asher pulled a chair close to Aubrey. "It's over. Victor North is already distancing himself, claiming he was misled by Gisele. He won't touch us for a long time." "And Sebastian?" Aubrey asked. "In custody. Bail will be denied given the flight risk to the Caymans you uncovered," Asher said. He reached out, brushing a stray hair from her face. "You saved the company, Aubrey. Again." "I just cleaned up my mess," she whispered. "No," Asher said firmly. "You claimed your worth. You are not depreciating code, Aubrey. You are the source code." The tension that had been building between them for months, through late nights, shared coffees, and corporate warfare, finally snapped. Aubrey looked at his lips. "Is this appropriate for a workplace?" "I own the building," Asher murmured, leaning in. I make the rules." He kissed her. It wasn't tentative. It was a merger of equals. It was passionate, demanding, and full of promises that went far beyond business. Aubrey melted into him, finally letting go of the armor she had worn for so long. She wasn't the ex-girlfriend. She wasn't the victim. She was the victor. But as they pulled apart, breathless, Asher's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and frowned. "What is it?" Aubrey asked, tracing the line of his jaw. "A message from my brother Grant," Asher said, confused. He says there's someone in the lobby asking for you. Someone who claims to be your husband." Aubrey froze. "I don't have a husband." "He says his name is Julian Thorne," Asher read, "Sebastian's estranged brother, and he says he owns 51% of the voting rights you just recovered." Aubrey's eyes widened. The past wasn't done yet. It had just brought reinforcements. The lobby of Vaughan Global was a cathedral of silence, broken only by the sharp click of Asher's shoes as he marched toward the reception desk, Aubrey close on his heels. Standing near the security turnstiles was a man who looked like a jagged, unpolished version of Sebastian. Julian Thorne wore a leather jacket that had seen better decades, and his eyes held a reckless glint that Sebastian's cowardly gaze never possessed. "Julian," Aubrey breathed, stopping a few feet away. "What is this?" "What do you mean?" "Husband." Julian smirked, tossing a thick, bound document onto the marble reception desk. "Hello, wifey. Sorry I missed the anniversary. I was busy being blacklisted by my dear brother." Asher stepped between them, radiating a cold, lethal menace. "You have 10 seconds to explain before I have you removed. Permanently." "Relax, billionaire," Julian said, raising his hands in mock surrender. "I'm not here to claim conjugal rights. I'm here to tell you that my brother is even slimier than you think." He pointed to the document. 5 years ago, Sebastian needed a guarantor for a high-risk loan from a cartel-adjacent bank in Macau. He couldn't use his name, and he couldn't ask you, Aubrey, because you would have read the fine print. Aubrey reached past Asher and grabbed the document. Her hands shook as she flipped through it. It was a marriage license, dated 5 years ago, Las Vegas, signed by Aubrey Langston and Julian Thorne. "I never signed this," Aubrey whispered, horrified. "I was in Boston that weekend at a supply chain conference." "I know," Julian said. "And I was in rehab. Sebastian forged both our signatures. He used my identity because I was the black sheep. If the loan went south, the debt collectors would come for me, not him. And he listed you as the spouse to attach your credit rating to the loan." "That's fraud," Grant Grayson said, appearing quietly behind them, adjusting his glasses. "Textbook felony fraud." "It gets better," Julian said, his expression darkening. "That loan? It wasn't for the company. It was to pay off a gambling debt he incurred betting against his own initial startup. He bet against you, Aubrey. He bet you'd fail." Aubrey felt the air leave her lungs. The betrayal wasn't just professional, it was foundational. Sebastian hadn't just used her. He had bet on her destruction from day one. "Why are you here now?" Asher asked, his voice low, his hand resting protectively on Aubrey's shoulder. "Because the loan is due," Julian said grimly. "And since Sebastian is in federal custody, the bank, and by bank I mean the triad, is looking for the next of kin. That's us, Aubrey. We owe them $20 million, or they start breaking legs." "I'll pay it," Asher said instantly. "Grant, wire the funds." "No," Aubrey said. Her voice was quiet, but stopped Grant in his tracks. "Aubrey," Asher turned to her, his eyes pleading, "this is dangerous. Let me handle it. It's pocket change to me." "No, Asher," Aubrey looked up, her eyes burning with a fierce, cold light. Sebastian created this debt. Sebastian forged this bond. If you pay it, he wins. He still controls my life. She turned to Julian. You said you have 51% of the voting rights for Thorn Logistics? I do. Julian nodded. I stole the physical stock certificates from his safe while the feds were raiding his office. I figured they were my inheritance. Give them to me, Aubrey commanded. Transfer the voting rights to me. I will dissolve Thorn Logistics. I will liquidate every chair, every server, every paperclip. I will use the assets to pay the debt, and I will burn the company to the ground. You destroy your life's work? Julian asked, impressed. My life's work is in my head, Aubrey tapped her temple. Thorn Logistics is just a monument to a liar. I'm tearing it down. Asher looked at her, and the pride on his face was blinding. That's my girl, he whispered. The liquidation of Thorn Logistics was not a funeral. It was an exorcism. Aubrey worked with a ruthlessness that terrified Wall Street. She sold the client lists to competitors, excluding the fraudulent ones. She sold the office lease. She sold the brand IP. But Victor North wasn't done. Sensing blood in the water, Victor filed an emergency injunction, claiming that as a potential buyer of the debt, he had rights to the assets. He tried to freeze the liquidation, hoping to trap Aubrey in the legal marriage liability and force her to resign from Vaughn Global to avoid a conflict of interest. It was a Tuesday morning when Victor North marched into the liquidation hearing, flanked by an army of lawyers. The courtroom was packed. The press was hungry. Your Honor, Victor's lawyer boomed. Ms. Langston is acting emotionally. She is destroying shareholder value to spite her ex-husband. We offer to buy the company intact. If Victor bought it, he would bury the evidence of his own collusion with Sebastian. Aubrey stood up. She wasn't wearing the corporate armor of a suit today. She wore a simple white dress, stark and truthful. Your Honor, Aubrey said calmly, Mr. North claims he wants to preserve value. But I have here a deposition from Julian Thorne, admitted into evidence this morning, confirming that the marriage binding me to this debt is a forgery. She held up the paper. However, Aubrey continued, turning to look Victor North in the eye, I am not asking for an annulment today. I am accepting the responsibility. The room gasped. Asher, sitting in the front row, tensed. I am accepting the role of acting CEO of Thorn Logistics for exactly 1 hour, Aubrey declared, and in that hour I have authorized the release of all internal communication logs regarding the North Star acquisition attempt to the public domain, in the interest of transparency. Victor's face went grey. You can't do that. That's privileged. It's not privileged if the CEO authorizes it, Aubrey smiled ice cold. And since I am the wife of the owner and the holder of the majority voting rights, I just did. Phones in the courtroom began to buzz. The emails were out. Emails showing Victor North bribing Gisele. Emails showing Victor discussing how to short-sell Vaughn Global stock using insider info. This court is adjourned. The judge banged the gavel as chaos erupted. Victor North turned to flee, but he was blocked by a wall of reporters. His reputation was incinerated in seconds. Aubrey walked out of the courtroom, down the center aisle. She didn't look left or right. She walked straight to Asher Vaughn. Is it done? Asher asked, taking her hand. The company is gone, Aubrey said, feeling a weight lift off her soul that she hadn't realized she was carrying for 5 years. The debt is paid from the liquidation. Sebastian is bankrupt. Julian is clear. And I am unemployed again. Hardly, Asher smirked, pulling her close, not caring about the cameras. I believe you still have a position as Chief Strategy Officer, and another position I'd like to discuss. He led her out of the courthouse, away from the noise, into the waiting quiet of his car. Where are we going? Aubrey asked. To the airport, Asher said. We're going to Vegas. Aubrey laughed, a sound of pure freedom. Vegas? To gamble? No, Asher said, his eyes serious and tender. To annul a lie, and to start a truth. 6 months later. The wedding did not take place in Vegas. It took place on a private island in the Mediterranean, a place so secluded that not even a drone could spot it. There were no influencers, no thorn coin promoters, no press, only the people who mattered. Winter Grayson stood as the maid of honor, wearing a suit because she refused to wear a dress. It compromises my tactical mobility, she had argued. Julian Thorne was there, cleaned up and currently working as the head of Vaughan's physical security, a job where his rough edges were an asset, not a liability. And Sebastian? Sebastian was currently serving year 1 of a 20-year sentence for fraud, embezzlement, and forgery. His cellmate, rumor had it, was a very large man who had lost money on thorn coin. Aubrey stood before the altar, the ocean breeze catching her veil. She wore a gown that Asher had designed with her, classic, timeless, and structured. Asher Vaughan stood waiting. The man who owned ships, skyscrapers, and data centers looked as if he was the one who had been given the world. When Aubrey reached him, he didn't wait for the priest. He took her hands. You once told me you were depreciating code, Asher said, his voice thick with emotion, loud enough for the small gathering to hear. You were wrong. You are the algorithm that makes my world make sense. You are the logic and the beauty. You are the only partner I will ever need. Aubrey squeezed his hands, tears prickling her eyes. Not tears of sadness, but of overwhelming gratitude for the woman she had fought to become. I didn't need a husband to save me, Aubrey said softly. I needed to save myself first. But I am very glad I found you in the dark. I pronounce you, the priest smiled, skipping the formalities, partners for life. You may kiss. The kiss was the seal on a contract that no lawyer could break. Later, at the reception, under the canopy of real stars, Aubrey sat looking out at the ocean. Her phone buzzed. She hadn't looked at social media in months, but curiosity got the better of her. A video was trending. It was a clip of Lila Banks, crying in a dimly lit room, selling her designer purses to pay rent. The caption read, Jock Karma. Aubrey didn't like it. She didn't comment. She simply turned off the phone and handed it to Asher. Everything okay? He asked, handing her a glass of champagne. Perfect, Aubrey smiled. I just closed the last tab. Asher raised his glass. To the future. To the future, Aubrey echoed. She looked at her hand. There was no heavy, gaudy rock like the one Sebastian had forced Lila to wear. There was a sleek, elegant band of rare platinum, inlaid with diamonds that formed a binary code. Translated, it read, equal. Aubrey Langston had lost a boy who treated her like an accessory, and in the fire of her own competence, she had forged a life with a man who treated her like a queen. She took a sip of champagne, leaned her head on her billionaire husband's shoulder, and finally, truly, rested. This story isn't just about revenge, it's about the reclamation of self-worth. Aubrey Langston didn't wait for a savior. She became one, using her intelligence and integrity to dismantle a life built on lies. She proved that dignity is the most expensive currency, and competence is the ultimate revenge. Sebastian and Victor fell not because of bad luck, but because of the inevitable collapse of deceit. Aubrey found love not by begging for it, but by standing so tall that only a man of equal stature could reach her. Enjoyed the story? If Aubrey's journey fired you up, please like this video and subscribe for more stories where karma hits hard and justice is served cold. Share this with someone who needs to be reminded of their worth today. Remember, you are not depreciating assets. You are the source code of your own life. See you in the next story.